to the Broadway Q&A presented by Playbill and The Growing Studio. I'm Danny George. Every Monday and Wednesday, I sit down with different directors, choreographers, composers, lyricists, you name it. Every Friday, I sit down with different musical theater and acting colleges. I am so excited for a very special guest today. But before we bring him on, please make sure you are following us on Instagram for the latest information on all of our upcoming streams. That's at Playbill and at The Growing Studio. I am so excited to welcome Conor McPherson here today, director behind Girl from the North Country. Hello, Conor, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Danny. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Great.
Now, I understand that you are the director and librettist, is that right, behind Girl from the North Country?
That's correct, yes.
Oh my goodness, that's rare that we find that combination. So I'm so excited to interview you and pick your brain today.
Oh, great, yeah, look forward to it.
Now, if any of our viewers have any questions, comment on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll be bringing some of you onto the broadcast today to ask Conor a question for yourself. So let's dive in if that's all right.
Great.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit about your process with Girl from the North Country and how it's been building a Broadway musical, I know, for the first time?
Right, yes, it was quite an unusual process, I suppose, because normally when I'm working on a play or working on a show, it's an idea that I've had that I'm working on and that I, write and then bring to fruition, hopefully, so it happens in that way that I start with the idea and then bring it to life, hopefully. Right. With Girl from the North Country, I was approached by representatives of Bob Dylan's, record company and his management, asking me, was I interested in using Bob's songs to try to do a show. So it started kind of the other way around, where someone came to me and said, what about this? And initially I was a little puzzled as to how you might do that. I had never done it before. And but then I just had this idea of maybe setting a show in the 1930s, and I thought that would be a new and different way to weave Bob's music into a play. I had this idea of maybe a kind of Eugene O'Neill kind of feeling, and so I sent back a page or two just with that idea to them, and they were really into that. And I got the go-ahead from Bob to start working on it, and they sent me all his albums. So I just started listening to everything. So suddenly I found myself in this situation of trying to put this thing together.
Right.
And we initially did it at the Old Vic Theatre in London, and we started by having some workshops there. I'd written up a script, and we got some actors in who were singers and some musicians, and we spent a couple of days working on it there initially. And then we came back and we did another longer workshop of maybe about 10 days. And it started to really come together at that point. It was very exciting. And then we started to cast it and move towards, an actual production, which we opened in London in 2017. It was, yeah.
And we've all heard such tremendous things. So I'm so excited for theater to open and to run to go and see it. My biggest question is, where's the setting of the musical? Where does it take place?
The musical takes place in Duluth, up in Minnesota. So it's right up there on the Great Lakes, and it's really far north, and it's set during wintertime. It's set in November when it's very cold, and it's set around a guest house or a boarding house, where we have a family who are living there, who run this premises, and living there in this place are a whole bunch of people who are suffering because the time is, it's at the time of the Depression. It's 1934. So you have people who have nowhere to live and people who are just drifting through. And so it charts the relationships that happen with the family and their guests and people who arrive there. And we use music and song to, to create a tapestry of that time and that place to reveal our characters.
Now, I know all your previous work is set in Ireland, or a lot of it is set in Ireland. All the shows that have come to Broadway have been set in Ireland. What was it like setting a show in America?
It was great fun. It was really refreshing to do something so different. Now, when we did it first, we did it with a cast who were mostly British and Irish. So we were sort of stabbing, I guess, in the dark, in the sense that we had a show that was set in America. We were doing our best to try and to bring that feeling to life. And you know, I thought we were doing pretty good. But then we did the show in 2018 at the Public Theater in New York. We did it with all American cast then. And it was great to just really be able to ask all those questions like, do Americans say this thing? Do they talk like this? You know, and so very quickly they would say, oh, we would say it like this, you know, and so very quickly, you know, it brought on a deeper American feeling, which, you know, was great and really opened it up. And also American artists who sing and act, you know, they really had Bob Dylan in their DNA. They'd grown up with Bob Dylan, and so that there was a real connection there. So that was great to do.
I lived in London for 3 years, and I did a show. I opened the Burnt Part Boys while we were over there, and it takes place in West Virginia. And I ended up being the token American. So all of the questions about American culture flooded, and it was so fascinating that we think we know so much about other cultures, but as soon as you jump in, you just learn so much more.
Oh, I know. And as an Irish person, you know, we see movies that are set in Ireland, you know, or have, you know, actors playing Irish people, and, you know, you cringe at the accent and so forth. So I didn't want to be that person setting a show in America. So, you know, hopefully we dodged some bullets.
I've heard it's brilliant. So I'm going to bring on a viewer, if that's okay, who has a question for you.
Great.
Loading up. Hi, Lance, are you there? Sorry, let's give it a sec. Lance, can you hear us? All right, we're going to bring him out and bring him back in.
Okay, great.
Conor, where are you quarantining at the moment?
I am in Dublin in Ireland right now. We were in New York. We just opened our show on Broadway when everything happened, and so we shut down about a week after our opening night, unfortunately. But I came back to Ireland, and we've been here ever since. And we've been keeping in touch with our wonderful cast in New York, and we're all hanging in there together, and just, you know, hopefully waiting for the day that we'll get some good news for the world and for theater.
So you did have your Broadway opening night.
We had our Broadway opening night at the Belasco Theater.
Of course.
And it was great, you know. It was really, really lovely, very special.
How did it differ between that and the plays that you've opened on Broadway?
Wow, very, you know, it was strange in a way, because with a Broadway musical, you know, your cast is so big. I think we have, I don't know, about 25 or 30 people in our company up there on stage between our swings and our, you know, our ensemble. And, you know, we had a huge group taking our curtain call. So it was really, really magnificent feeling. You know, when we do a play, often my plays have like 5 people, 6 people, you know, so it was, it really felt amazing to have all our friends up there taking their bow. It was incredible.
It's so exciting. It's the most exhilarating feeling in the world. You know?
It really is great. Yeah.
I think Lance is back. I'm going to bring him back on to ask you a question.
Hi, I'm so sorry I lost my internet there for a second. My name is Lance Jewett. I am from Kansas City, and I'm a recent graduate of TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. My question for you is sort of like a general career question. It's like, having written now and directed for plays, films, and musicals, what are the unique aspects of each forms that you enjoy the most? What are some challenges that are unique to each of those forms? And what's your process like for deciding like which story fits which of those mediums?
Wow, thanks, Lance. It's a great question. Well, I think films are very different to stage shows, for sure. I think with films, you're always trying to capture just little moments, and they can happen once, and they can be beautiful, and they can even be an accident, and you capture it forever. And so you're really looking for those little moments of magic. Of course, on stage, you're trying to do the same thing over and over every night, and it is different every night, and often very magical things happen, and you want that, and you want those little accidents. But when you're putting a stage show together, I always feel you're like it's like being a coach with a sports team. You're really trying to get everybody ready for the big game. You know, there's a big psychological morale building exercise that happens. In a movie, you have those incredible moments where it might just be a very small little thing that you're doing. It could be a scene with no dialogue, which is always great to do, and it could be just a real little tiny little moment that you're trying to discover. And that it's so different in that way. I think then with musicals, I hadn't done a musical until the last few years, and so the way I describe it was, when I was doing plays, we are always trying to actually, although I never realized it, we're always trying to get to that moment, like what happens in musicals, except we have no music, where you're trying to have that moment that just it feels transcendent. Music does that so instantly and so incredibly well that in plays you're really digging deep to try and achieve that, and in a musical you can just do it. And I described it as, it's a bit like laboring at high altitudes when you're doing a play, and then suddenly you're doing a musical and someone hands you an oxygen tank and says, "You want some oxygen?" we can go even higher. And you're like, "Oh, there's oxygen tanks? I didn't even realize we could go," you know. And you suddenly find that you've got this incredible fuel, you know, and this incredible storytelling rocket fuel. And so I love that. Discovering that at a much later stage in my directing career, as it were. And one of the great joys, of course, of films is using music, because when you have images or you have some sequence and you're putting music on it, it's just the whole thing just deepens and changes. And sometimes using silence, of course, you know, which you can't do so much in the theater. You can do it, but in films, when you use it, it's incredible. So they're all so unique and so different. And every show, of course, is so unique and so different, and you're always learning, you're always finding out, and you're always making mistakes. You can, like, the last thing you did is of no use to you on the next thing you did, and you're constantly finding that out. You're just always facing a new set of problems and challenges. So I'm been very fortunate to work in all those areas, and I've loved them all.
Cool, thank you.
Lance, do you have another question?
Yeah, I do. This stuff is more back to Girl from the North Country, like you guys were talking about earlier. What was the process like of not only using someone else's music and using the music of a very iconic artist, but also even like reconceptualizing some of that music to make it fit your story? And how much of a personal hand did you have in that, as well as others who were like music supervisors, people who were working on the arrangements and such?
Well, I was very lucky in the sense that I really had carte blanche to use Bob's songs in whatever way we wanted. And I was very lucky in the sense that Bob's songs are so suggestive and poetic, so that actually you could put them in anywhere and they would kind of mean something. You could move a song around and it would mean something, or a different character could sing it and it would mean something. They're so universal. And I was pretty hands-on. We had a wonderful group helping us develop it. Wonderful arranger, Simon Hale, just terrific. And we would sit there together, and often I would just have a guitar and we'd play and we'd work it out. We'd work out a new song sometimes, where we would just, the night before rehearsals, I might be listening to a song and I'd come in the next day and I'd say, "Let's try this." And we'd just teach it to the cast very quickly, and Simon would very quickly get a backing vocal arrangement going, and we'd just do it. And that was very free and a lot of fun. And one of the things we found was that the tricky part in a musical is when people start singing and why they start singing. One of the places I found to do it, you know, which was a no-brainer, was basic scene changes. So it's like, you know, you're singing and you go, "Okay, well, the scene's kind of coming to an end. So let's use a song to get us into the next." So you know, they start singing, and of course during the song what you're doing is creating the other scene. So that's kind of taking care of the choreography and the staging to some degree, so that when it ends you're in the next scene. And the other little trick that we found, which was lovely, was that you go, "Well, we're singing now, we're doing a song, so we could keep going and just do another song here as well." So sometimes one song would just turn into another song, and sometimes we would have one song that turned into another song that turned into a third song. And we had a lot of fun doing that. And luckily as well, Bob was very easy with us just using this. You could break them up, you could shorten them, you could splice them into each other. So it was a really, really fun creative process.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Lance.
Lance, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Okay, so I understand that you were the writer and director. So how did this concept come about? You know, you have this huge catalog of Bob Dylan songs. What made you go, this is the story I want to tell with him?
Well, usually if I have an idea for a play, I only really will have one idea. And if they hadn't wanted my first idea, I wouldn't have had another one. So I would, so we were going to fit the songs into this idea. And when I was trying to pick what songs that we would use, really I just would listen to all of his songs. I loaded them all up onto my little iPod player, which I believe now is really outdated. I had no idea. I thought I was but we had them all there, and I would go for long walks and listen to Bob's music, and just when I liked a song, when it just made me feel something, like, okay, we're going to use that song. And it was, so really we just set about it like that, because I just felt, well, if I like this song, I'm going to enjoy working with it, and I think an audience will enjoy it too. So it was a very impressionistic, very subjective, very free kind of process in that way. It was slightly crazy, probably, now that I think about it. I remember when we were about to do the first preview in 2017, and we were getting in our technical rehearsals, and we were doing some dress rehearsals and so forth, and I suddenly realized that I'd really made no concession to trying to find out which of Bob's songs actually were big hits, and which, should we have them in the show. And I realized it was too late to do anything. So it was very free and very enjoyable in that way.
How wonderful. We get a lot of jukebox musicals, and you often feel that we're trying to cram in certain songs because they're fan favorites. So how exciting to work organically and create and not have that pressure. I mean, that is just so cool and so artistic.
It is, but I think it's a real mark too of, I remember I said to Bob's manager at one point, well, does Bob want to see a tape of this, or does he want to, have some input, or is there any songs he doesn't want us to use, or any songs he wants us to use? And his manager said, Bob just wants you to just do whatever you want to do. He's just happy for you to feel free. And
of course, he's as cool as his music is.
Exactly. And I think he probably knew instinctively that was the only way you could do it. And yeah, so it was amazing. There's so much actually about it now that I almost take for granted, but it was all amazing.
So Conor, when you're writing a new play, what does that process look like?
A new play, really, for me, will come from just an idea that will just pop into my mind, usually a very ghostly situation, some kind of, it's almost like I'm looking at the stage in a funny way. I'll see a room, and I'll see some people there, and I sort of know who they are. And over time, you begin to discover more about them. So it's a weird thing. I imagine it just comes from your subconscious, and it just kind of emerges in that way. And then you just got to allow it to gestate, and you start to make some notes. But the other thing that you need beyond the idea is just a feeling of inspiration. It has to be an idea that in some way you feel you want to hang a lot of energy on. So it can't just be something that you're not really emotionally attached to. The way that I often describe it is it has to feel kind of like a crush. It's kind of like something that is an emotional, involuntary feeling. I think when you have that about an idea, then it will probably have the energy to allow you to write. The way that I do that is I always have to convince myself that I'm not writing anything. I just, every few days, I'll just make a few notes, which I will convince myself are just a few notes. And then after a while, you start to join those up a little bit and say, well, I'll make a plan for something. So you're never actually writing something. You're just kind of making a plan and jotting some. And then after you've done about 25 pages of that, you realize you're sort of writing a first draft of something, and you're in big trouble. So that's usually how it starts for me.
And how long does it take you to write a play in completion?
It's oddly enough, and I've spoken to other people about this. It's sort of a little bit like a human pregnancy. About 9 months is usually a pretty good kind of place from when you start to write. But you can be thinking about something for years actually, and before you get to that 9 months, or you mightn't have time to get to it. Although there are people who say that plays really should be written quickly. And there's something in that. I remember someone saying before, like a play should take 2 weeks to write. A week for Act 1 and a week for Act 2, and if it's not that, you're in trouble. And there's something in that. Plays do need just a kind of mad energy, and they shouldn't be too neat. They shouldn't have too much logic. They need to kind of make mad leaps of energy. The way I try to achieve that is I write a little burst of a few pages, and then I won't write anything else probably for a week or two. Then I'll write another little burst of a few pages, and then I won't, then I'll leave a space. If you can do that, what you're bringing to it always is just kind of a mad fresh air. It's like someone just walking into a room, slamming the door open and shouting for 5 minutes and then leaving. So you're getting that. That's good energy in a play. And if you get a few bursts of that going, you're probably starting to get something together.
And Conor, do you ever get writer's block? And if you do, how do you pace it?
I probably do. I think all writers do in some way. I remember it being described not so much as being blocked as you can write things, but you just think everything you write is rubbish, and so it's not a good. You don't continue with it. So I think it's that kind of feeling. Most writers know the wonderful luxury of just having a nice bit of a flow going with something, and that is really what every writer is aiming at, and every playwright, and that is when you're just absolutely feeling complete and whole. And actually the weird irony is you're sort of absent when that happens, because you go into a little bit of a trance, I think, and it just streams out of you. That's where you want to be and not be, because you're not actually really there when it happens. And most of the time we're not there. The funny thing is that it's a bit like Steve McQueen he's in a movie called Le Mans about race car drivers, and he has a line where someone's asking him, what's your life like when you're not racing cars? And he said, it's just waiting. And I think there's something of the addictive rush, especially for playwriting, I think, which comes from that. Because even if you're writing something else, even if you're writing something for the screen, or you're working on something, all playwrights are waiting for that strange magical moment where you're going to write something for the stage that actually feels like it's got energy. We're all addicted to it in a weird way, and we could go years without having that great fix, but that's what we're always waiting for.
Thank you. I have another viewer I'd like to bring on to ask you a question.
Sure. Luba!
I'm just watching you. It's so great to see you, Conor.
So good to see you too. How are you doing, honey?
Really good. Really good. Actually, Danny, we had a little soiree at Mayor Winningham's house yesterday, and Mayor Skyped Conor, so we got a little glimpse of him yesterday.
Oh, good.
Did you have a good time?
Where are you quarantining at the moment?
It was great. So this is twice in 1 week I get to see Conor.
Oh, that's wonderful. Where are you quarantining right now, Luba?
At home. I'm at home in the city, New York City.
Good for you.
I'm lucky to have some space here, so I don't feel so confined, really.
Of course. Can you talk a little bit about working with Conor and about the show, what the process has been like?
Well, we were talking about him yesterday. I don't know if your ears were ringing, but we all feel, the cast really feels, I mean, it's unanimous. We all feel very lucky lucky to have Conor as a director. And it's very rare to have a director who also wrote the piece. So he really, as we moved along, he kind of he catered to everyone that he cast in the show, and we had the luxury of changing lines and kind of just switching things around or adding, subtracting, whatever he felt would suit us, the actor, or the piece better. So, and on top of all of that, his temperament and everything. I mean, he's just fun. He's the kind of director who picks up his guitar in the middle of a rehearsal and just starts playing with you and singing with you. And it was just a joy, and that's unusual.
Well, we had a great time, and we will again. We had a great time, and as Luba was saying, when you've got so much talent in the room, a lot of the time I'm just trying to get out of the way. I'm just like as Luba would say, we just change it very quickly. If someone has an idea that they want to try, we're just looking for that energy where people are just feeling real and feeling rooted and just feeling comfortable and relaxed, so that there's no effort. There's no, of course there's effort, of course there's acting, but that we just want the energy to flow as easy as it can. So we would just change things really quickly and not worry too much about it and try things. And with this cast, we're so blessed. I mean, everybody is so talented and everybody's so different. I mean, everybody brings such a different flavor and a different energy, so it's just an embarrassment of riches, just a real feast, this cast.
Yeah, it's unusual in that way. I mean, we're all different ages, and we all kind of come from different backgrounds. I was just thinking about that this morning, how you cast this damn show. I mean, it just we're really all very different, and it's unusual. It's great, and it's a great group of people. It's a great group of people, and that's also unusual. So we were all in Mayor's Pool yesterday, and we were all like, this doesn't happen very often. And to have a director like this, and he's at the helm. I mean, he sets the tone. He sets the tone to, how rehearsals are being conducted, how we all will respond to each other. So, it's pretty special.
Yeah, well, you guys make it very easy. And also as well, it's like, I always say it's like the energy coming through Bob's music and his songs that we're able to use. I mean, it just fills our tank all the time, We're so lucky in that way. So yeah, it's very special. I agree. It's been very special.
Really is.
Luba, do you have a question for Conor?
My question or the one I'm supposed to read?
Ooh, either or both. How exciting.
Well, I'll read the one that you guys sent me, and then I might.
If you have a question too, I'd love to hear.
I might add one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go, Conor. Are you ready?
Great.
Janelle Black from Orlando, Florida, wants to know what was your first thought when you got a call from Bob Dylan's people regarding collaborating?
Well, I'm just a huge music fan, and for me, people like Bob Dylan are not real. They're like gods in some strange pantheon that does not exist on Earth. So to get something like that, I was just like, I knew I was going to have to take it very seriously, and I was pretty nervous about it too. But also at the same time, I also didn't think it would ever happen. So it was a very strange feeling. But then all the way along, I never quite could figure out whether Bob deeply cared about his work to the extent that he was looking to do something very different, or that he didn't care and didn't want to know what you were doing. And I think that there's that lovely mystery about him. It's probably both in a strange way. It's like you see him when he's on stage and he's just looks like he could be anywhere. He's just in himself. He's just doing it maybe for himself, or he's communing with some higher power. It's almost like the audience aren't there, and yet he's giving 1,000,000% all at the same time. So it was that strange thing where I never quite knew where I was, except that he was giving me 1,000,000%, and yet he was never there. So it was an absolutely brilliant feeling, actually, and I always feel really honored. I think it'll be years before I ever really understand how lucky I am. It still hasn't sunk in. That's the truth.
Wow. Wow. And you've been working on this piece for a while now, several years. Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And also the amazing people that it's brought me into contact with, just all this talent, because when I was, doing plays with no music or no people singing in them anyway, I was working with really great performers. But the performers then that you meet who are able to act and sing and dance and perform like that, it brings you into a whole other realm of relationships with artists, and it's a very deep one. The one around music and how you sing, you have to be very respectful and very careful around that whole area, because it's an incredible power on stage. And those relationships, when everybody's singing together, Lou, but when we're working out a new song, or like when we were working on a new song, even for our Broadway production, like something like Pressing On, and we're all just we're all really going through something together. I think you'd agree.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the voices in this show are pretty incredible. Pretty incredible.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, Luba, thank you so much for being here.
I had one more question.
Oh, please, yes, please.
I was just curious, Conor, if this is your first time writing a musical.
Sure.
Would you consider writing another one?
Absolutely, I would. Of course, definitely, I would. And also as well, I think even any play that I consider doing now, I think anybody could just start singing. Why not? So yeah, I could. It may have ruined me. I may be now completely spoiled.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
That leads to another question too, and that's: are you working on anything presently during quarantine?
I'm working on it. Yes, on a number of scripts, that I'm working on, things, older things that I started before that I've picked back up again, new things, so yes, the way that I have to do it though in quarantine, we have a 10-year-old daughter here, and in terms of family life and so forth, if I don't get up and if I'm not kind of doing some work at 7 a.m, the day can really disappear very fast into all the other stuff that you end up doing. So so it's weird. So you think, oh, I'm going to have loads of time, but actually you need to make the time. That's the strange irony. But yeah, I'm working on stuff. I have to. I always have to.
Of course. Luba, do you have any other questions?
No, just happy to see your face, Conor. Really am.
You too, Luba, and I'm looking forward to getting. I hope there was a few little moments that were videotaped at Mayor's house yesterday that I'm going to get sent on WhatsApp. I'm looking forward to seeing them.
I think there were a lot of cameras going on.
Great. I miss you guys.
Same here.
Well, Luba, we cannot wait to see the show. I hope I get to see it so soon. I'm so excited.
From your mouth to God's ears. All right.
Thank you. Take care.
See you, Luba. Bye.
Great to see you.
You too.
Let's talk a little bit about casting this show. I loved what Luba said about having such a different group of people. What is it that you look for in actors, and what was it specifically that you were looking for in actors for Girl from the North Country?
I think when I'm doing auditions, you really are looking for, when someone comes in the room, that something happens. You're looking for their presence, their mysterious X factor. And I would always go with that. When someone comes in, even if they're not actually maybe completely right for the part, they have that energy. I know that I can tailor the part to suit them. So I'm really looking for that. And I think in this cast, we have everybody who comes on stage makes a difference in that way. Something changes when they come on stage. And so that's what I'm always looking for. And we were so blessed and so lucky with the amazing cast that joined us for our New York production. It's amazing.
Alternatively, what makes you want to rehire an actor?
Wow. It's a very strange thing. The relationship that I think we have as artists when we're working together on shows is very it's very deep, and it's very those relationships, when you go through something like that, it sort of bonds you in a way that you've really been through something together. And there's people that you've worked with like that, you've been there together, you've been through a lot together. You don't quite really realize it at the time, but your friendship really grows without you even realizing it. And working with same actors again and again only deepens it even further. It's a wonderful thing. Normally, most of the people I've worked with, I want to work with again, and I do. And there's actors I've worked with, maybe on 6 productions, for sure. And you just have that beautiful shorthand with those people. You can give them the space to work. They trust you. So for all those reasons, and you see many directors will have a little company that sort of builds up over the years. It often happens that way. I can really understand it.
Speaking of, if you could go back in time and pick any actor to work with who has passed on, who would that be and why?
Wow, there's so many. I mean, I think in terms of American actors, there would be, there's so many great American character actors, that I've never had a chance to work with, and that I've only perhaps seen in American movies. But I think of people like Ruth Gordon, those kind of people that come on, they're so unique, you just think, wow, if you could work with someone like that, what you couldn't create, for them. Actors like Warren Oates, those people that they come into movies to make a huge mark on the movie. And you almost think that they're not even acting; they're just being themselves. There's people like that. I'm always looking. I think in a way, maybe over the years, I've tended to work with people that you regard as those great character actors. That's usually what I'm looking for, as opposed to, a more blank canvas. I'm never really looking too much for a blank canvas. I'm looking for people to come in with a lot of baggage that I can then help them lift and help shape and help move it around the stage for them, so that they can get rid of some of it. Maybe, that's often what I'm looking for.
It's fantastic. Thank you. This is a question from a viewer on YouTube. His name is Jeremy Weiss. Did you always envision the actors in the show acting as musicians as well? Was that something that came along later in the process?
Again, it was like, it was very organic in the sense that we would just try to, I really always, when I cast someone, then I try to then build the production around the people that I have. I'm not so much really trying to whip people into some preconceived idea. I'm looking to try and serve them to free up something that they have, that they can let loose on the stage, that I can't conceive of or I couldn't have imagined. And so what you would have then in our original production, perhaps there was someone who could play the drums, or there was someone who could play harmonica, or someone who could do something like that. And I say, okay, well, I want you to do that. And so you would start to find out what people could do and build it that way. And then, so this very organically, then that's what the show became. So it's really built from the strengths that are within the company.
Wow. And that's tremendous. That's very rare, Conor. I don't know if you know how rare that is, but that's so exciting.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing is that it's actually, it might be rare, but it's pretty smart, because the thing is,
it's so smart.
The thing is, if everybody comes on stage is doing the thing that they love doing the most,
right?
And then the next person who comes on is doing it, and the next person who comes on is doing it, and the next person, you're whamming the audience every time with the people's best shot, so right. That's what I'm trying to, and then I try and get the credit for
and you deserve it. But I think we're living in this world now where there's so many commercial musicals and so many big commercial entities coming in that concept is preconceived, and we are right. We're mapped out to a T because of the larger corporations that are coming into the world of theater. So it's so exciting to have something that like this, where the process is so organic and unique and different. That's really exciting.
Right. Well, I suppose it's just because I had no experience of that other world at all, so I guess it was just a fluke in that way. But at the same time, it's that weird thing again with Bob Dylan of kind of, they came to someone that had never done a musical before. You know what I mean? It's that weird. You sort of think, is that conscious or is it just odd? You just don't know with him. But it's
Right.
he just makes these calls, and you go, okay.
Yeah, I think you made the right call, though, obviously.
Hope so.
This next question is from Jesse Hove from Minnesota. In what ways has the production and the actor performances evolved from Girl from the North Country, from London to Off-Broadway to Broadway?
Right. Well, that's a great question. When we were doing it first, I suppose we were really just trying to find out how to do the show and how it would work. And we tried to be American, I suppose, knowing what we knew as non-Americans. When we came to New York and started to build it with an American company, very quickly I could see the ease with which American performers could help to allow the process to evolve and to become an American show. And then because we used pretty much the same cast when we moved from the public theater to Broadway, we had another chance to come back to the show and look at it again and develop it even further. And I always find that every time you do a show more than once with the same cast, most people I think would agree with this, it gets a lot deeper. Somehow the show is in everybody's bones in a new way, and they come and they do it again in a way that's more free and exploring more. And you think to yourself, wow, we got to a stage when we did this the first time where we thought, wow, we've really wrung as much as we can out of this. But then you go to do it again and you go, wow, we hardly scratched the surface. So it got deeper and deeper and deeper. And by the time we were doing the show on Broadway at the Belasco, it had really grown into something that was very confident in what it was. So it was a really, really great journey.
Well, while the focus is obviously on the show because it's such a hit, I'd love to ask a few more questions just about you, if that's okay. My next question is, what show have you never directed that you'd like to, and why?
Well, normally I only ever have directed things that I wrote, and really just because that was, when I started writing, I was in college and there was a little drama society, and you could put plays on with little groups, but you just directed it out of necessity because I didn't know any directors. We were all in the same boat. I'd be acting in it, and we'd direct. It would be everything. So I started like that, and then as we developed and had a little theater company and all of that, you find, well, you're just in that habit of writing and directing, and you don't question it too much. So as the years went by, really mostly what I directed was only my own things. If I were to branch out from that, of course, I'd love to try, Chekhov would be wonderful to try and do. Those great plays like Vanya or like Cherry Orchard. Eugene O'Neill would be great to try and do one of those, Long Day's Journey or something like that. Just really to have the freedom to work with actors and not be worried about the script. Is the script working? Which is something you're as a director of your own work, you're always trying to chop and change the script around. It'd be great to work on something that you didn't even have to ever think about that. So something like that I think would be great.
Conor, what's your proudest achievement thus far?
Oh, good. I guess every time you get a show in front of an audience that has a beginning, middle, and end, it's an achievement, and anybody who does it, can relate to that. I think so. There's plays that I think worked for me over the years that were good productions, I felt. And I guess you're always, maybe the last thing you've done is usually the one you're closest to. So Girl from the North Country right now. But there are other ones that I thought were good productions. The Seafarer, which we had on Broadway, was a nice production. The Night Alive, which we did down at the Atlantic Theatre off Broadway, was a nice production, I thought. Shining City was another one which I did, which I was very, very happy with. So there's a few, but at the same time, you do move on from the work that you've done. The strange thing about theater is that it disappears, once you've done it, and when it ends, it's almost as though it never existed, and that's the strange ghostly power of theater, and that's that's actually what's so fascinating about it, I think, for people. What's wonderful for us with Girl from the North Country is, although we're in this, the whole world is in this very strange hiatus, we still feel like we're in the middle of something, that we have this unfinished business, which I think keeps us motivated and directed, and we're looking forward to getting back to it.
I couldn't agree more. I am working hard to try to watch Zoom workshops and readings and stay in it. And I admire all of us that are fighting hard to keep it alive. But when you get into that room, into a theater, it is that live element that you're speaking of, that it goes away after. It's gone. And having that opportunity to sit and watch and absorb is magic.
That's right. And so, I mean, it's kind of close to a religious ritual, I think. That's the power of it, and and even if you're not religious, it has a secular spiritual power, which nothing else can match. So I think we're all addicted to it. So we will get back to it some way. We will eventually.
And I can't wait till it comes. Next question. You have such a diverse directing history. As a director, what draws you to a project? Are there things that consistently excite you about the various projects you're involved in, or does excitement strike randomly based on the individual project? So do you have works that you go, I don't want to direct this, and is there a reason why?
Well, usually for me, I'm directing something that it's part of the same process as the writing for me. It's when I write something, I then also cast it and direct it, and that's how you sort of finish the writing of it. So it's all kind of bound up in one process for me. But usually the things that would draw me to any script or project that I would like to direct, say if it wasn't even something by me, would be, you're always looking for something that has a certain unpredictability about it, something that stays ahead of the audience, something that has that kind of buoyancy and sense of flight that stays in the air somehow, defying gravity. That's what I feel that we got to try and achieve in the theater. So it's hard to explain what that is, but that sense of unpredictability from moment to moment is very important, I think.
I have one last question for you, if that's okay, Conor. How do you structure your time pre-quarantine and now? What habits do you contribute to long game resilience and success? And what nourishes and generates your creative energy?
Wow. Well, pre-COVID, it would depend. If I was directing, well, then that would dictate your day, because you're going down to rehearsals and whatever stage you are at in the process, which is a very nice state to be in, because writing is completely self-generated. You either doing it or you're not doing it. Nobody's really looking for it. No one's going to knock on the door and say, what have you done today? So it's a different experience. And luckily, I think for people who write and direct, you can drift from between the two extremes. The pendulum can swing both ways. And just when you're sick of being on your own, you get to actually be in a room with 20 people. And then when you're so exhausted from being in a room with 20 people, you get to go and be on your own. So it's my time depends on what part of the process I'm at. In terms of long-term, sustaining things over long-term, I think ultimately, like all artists, in a sense, your own curiosity just about that you're always learning, and that you're really just doing it for yourself because you're curious. If you can keep that sense of wonder alive, you'll be fine, because even if nobody is successful all the time, and we all got to do things that for whatever reason kind of work or don't work, or some of it worked and some of it didn't work. But at the same time, be actually in a room with people that you respect and you like doing that kind of work, you're already success. You've already won the lottery, because it's like, just to be doing that, is like, I never take it for granted. We get this opportunity to do something that we love. So in a way, if you can just keep that feeling going, that whatever we get to do, even having the time to think about what we do, professionally, to professionally have that time just to think about it is a great honor. So if you can just remind yourself of that it's not what people say about you in the paper or in some, in some public forum. If you are just interested in what you're doing, that's success.
Thank you for that. I'm sure that is going to speak to all the viewers how it's speaking to me right now. So I really appreciate it. Now, if you want to follow the production of Girl from the North Country, check out their social media. We should have a handle here. Awesome. Make sure you're checking it out. Buy tickets when they're available. I've heard nothing but fantastic things. Conor, it is such a pleasure to sit and talk with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You bet. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This is the Broadway Q&A. Please join us on Monday as we chat with director Marc Bruni, and Wednesday with music supervisor and director Mary Mitchell Campbell. This Friday, I speak with Florida State University and AMDA at 1 p.m. From Playbill and the Growing Studio. This is Danny George. Thanks so much. Take care.